Sometimes on startup, there is a loud bang. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Between the Sharks. We are in the murder van right now. It is cold and gross outside. That's kind of the bad news. The good news is we just got brand new tires on it yesterday. So with brand new tires, we're nearly adventure ready. As I pull the doghouse, let me tell you where we are here. I commuted in this thing at least 1,000 miles between October and December, kind of testing out this new motor, and it did pretty great for me. I just had one issue that developed, I'm not even sure when, and it's not a good one, you see. Now the problem is like the most frustrating automotive problems, which means it's inconsistent. Now the inconsistency is probably also a clue, but it makes it a lot harder to diagnose. And the issue we're having is sometimes on startup, there is a loud bang. And I'm not talking like a pop, like a backfire or whatever. It definitely feels somewhere up front on the engine. It sounds a little bit like it's on the starter side, but I'm not really sure. But it's super inconsistent. Usually it happens, it'll happen one time, and then it doesn't happen again, and the car starts right up and drives fine, no problem. See the issue here? So basically I turn the key and it feels like a hard start, kind of like timing, and then goes bang, and then bum, 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 and starts, right? So you would think timing would be number one on my list, but it's not. I'm gonna describe it. Turn the key and it almost hard starts, kind of like timing, so that's a clue, and then makes a bang sound, and then starts. So it only does it once, typically, that one bang. So I'm gonna give you so let's go through my top 5 theories. I don't know if it's 5 or not, but let's go through my theories in order. Number 1, the carburetor is leaking after I shut the car off, in which case fuel would be leaking down potentially through the intake into some cylinders. So when I try to start the car, there's just enough gas to try to fire more than one cylinder at a time, maybe. Well, I guess in theory, if that was the case, you would have to have spark in the wrong place at the wrong time, because it's a cold engine. So maybe my number 1 theory is not my number 1 theory. Number 2 theory, timing is too advanced. Now, the reason that wasn't my number 1 theory is I did back it off a little bit and it seemed to go away just a little bit and then came back. So my thought was maybe it was indeed the carburetor. But now that I've thought all those thoughts that I just thought in that last tiny 2 seconds, I'm wondering if it is indeed timing. Let me take you back. Now, when I put this new to me untested Craigslist motor in over the summer, I did figure out that the balancer that is on it has the timing mark at what I believe to be 12 o'clock, which is very common in the early 80s pre-86 motors and possibly some other small block Chevy motors. I noticed the timing cover had been changed, so at some point that balancer came off and went back on. So possibly it got swapped out and it is not, you know, stock to this engine. However, from that point, I kind of timed it by ear, and I'm pretty decent at that, but like a couple degrees here and there, you know. I mean, honestly, I prefer timing by ear anyway on an older motor, but I may be a little bit too advanced. So we will investigate the timing on this. I don't really know how successful I'll be if I try to pull the number 1 plug and, you know, watch the piston go to the top, because the number 1 plug on these is quite hard to get to. In addition, this valve cover is pretty difficult to remove to look at, you know, the valves. So we'll see, we'll just have to figure out how to skin that cat here in a second. Approach the problem as it were. Now, there's a couple other theories because I did my research on this and, you know, forums, and sometimes they're helpful, sometimes they're not at all. Now, one theory is that water is getting into the cylinders and partially hydrolocking, which I guess is possible, but the way to check that would be to pull all the spark plugs, spin it over, and sort of see if anything comes out. That's quite a challenge in here, unfortunately. So I'm cursorily aware of that. Now, while thinking of that, I am looking at this radiator hose, and there's nothing about that that looks good, so I think we'll be needing a new one of those. And we can check right here because it's cold. We got plenty of juice. It doesn't smell like coolant when it fires off. It doesn't, you know, doesn't seem like it's burning coolant either at any point. That smell and that smoke is pretty obvious. So even if it's a little bit, I feel like I'm pretty tuned in and would be able to tell if we were getting water into a cylinder. There's definitely no water in the oil. Maybe a little fuel in there. Maybe a little fuel in there. Okay. Okay. Great. It's gonna start to rain. Awesome. Awesome. So I guess if, you know, getting some water into the cylinders is number 3, I still think we would see a little bit in the oil and a little bit in the exhaust. We're gonna go back to number 1 for a second because there's a little bit of fuel flavor in the oil. And just because, you know, this is an Edelbrock. Now I bought it used, gave it a quick cleaning and shoved it on there. Didn't check the flows, didn't take it apart, didn't do any of that. Just jammed it on the thing. In addition, I have a fuel pressure regulator and I have a bypass. So in certain cases, you can put too much fuel and it'll blow the needle out of the seat and just kind of overfill the bowls, and it will keep kind of dumping. This thing does also smell like it's running kind of rich. So again, we may have an auxiliary problem in the carburetor, or that could be sort of the whole thing. Let's get on to number 4. All right, this theory is straight off the internet. I got my breakdancing cardboard out for it here. Now, while we're under here, let me remind you, this is a bang. It's kind of metallic, but it's not the clang. It's not the sound of the starter gear hitting the flywheel. Pretty confident about that. Although, that's interesting. We do have a broken tooth on the flywheel. Right there. So that doesn't mean... I don't know what that means, actually, gang. Like, is the engine having trouble turning over and the starter broke a tooth off the flywheel? Or is the problem down here? Does anyone know the answer to that? Anyway, what we're down here to discuss is number 4, which would be a broken flywheel. And I guess while we're down here, we'll be discussing number 5, which is loose torque converter bolts. So I guess we'll be maybe turning this over by hand and seeing how much damage we have. There's definitely one broken tooth. Interesting. Interesting. But not good. So if those are 4 and 5, maybe 6 is I have the plug wires on wrong, but that's a relatively easy thing to check. I double checked it, but I've also double checked it and gotten it wrong in the past. So we'll confirm that again, but the broken flywheel tooth is significant, I would say. Yeah, that makes me think the engine's actually fighting itself at some point when it tries to start. So how do we approach this? All right, there you go. Drop the pernurdle into neutral. So I'm gonna see if I can turn this thing by hand, just see if it gives me any resistance at any point, because, well, that would be indicative, right? Because there's no spark at that point, so we'll just see what happens turning it. If that doesn't give me any trouble, then I might go back to my theory of gas and timing is maybe a mixture. Maybe it's a mixture of 1 and 2, gang. What do you think about that? There is an irony to the fact that it's like 35 degrees and drizzling and I'm out here in the driveway and I have a garage and a lift. But this is just how it is, because there's stuff in the garage and on the lift. All right, got that hooked up. I can see the flywheel too, so that also helps. Yeah, I'm not sure what's the chicken or the egg with that broken flywheel tooth, but it's a clue, gang. So my theory is here, if it turns and there's fuel in there, that's going to clear the fuel out for sure. So while I'm thinking with you guys here and live, I'm wondering if we have two problems. A fuel leak, and B, a spark that is too advanced, because both of those things could be simultaneously true, and that would maybe get the wrong cylinders firing at the, you know, wrong time. What did I do here now? Why don't you do? All right, this is turning very easily. Is that another broken tooth? Or is that the same tooth? I gotta mark that. All right, so I got a little Sharpie mark on there. I'll put one more, but yeah, that's not good. That's my running theory on what the loud bang is. Now, why? Why? Oh, there's another one. Okay, let's mark that guy too. Two broken teeth, not good. It's weird, like there's not any other crazy wear on the flywheel, but that's a problem, obviously. All right, that's the original broken tooth. So I've got two broken teeth. All right, gang, we got two broken teeth. So the more I think about it, and the engine's turning freely, so I don't think it's really hydrolocked. So that's getting me back to like a combination of thoughts 1 and 2, that the carburetor is leaking fuel and that the timing is too far advanced, so that in theory, when it's getting spark, if there's fuel in different cylinders, it's, I don't know. Does that make any sense to anybody? I mean, I'm confusing myself in the sense that like it's only gonna fire off one spark at a time. However, if it's firing off that spark way too early and there's already fuel in the cylinder, I'm just trying to wrap my head around it, because in theory, like, it's not sounding like a backfire through the carb. It's not doing that pop sound that everyone I think is familiar with. It's definitely something different, and clearly like bucking the starter enough to break teeth. So we should look at the starter gear too. Dang it. All right, gang, so the starter teeth are actually surviving okay. We have two broken teeth on the flywheel. Otherwise, the engagement looks good. There's no other like crazy wear on the flywheel. So I don't know what else to think, except the engine is firing at entirely the wrong time on startup, bucking really hard, and that's what broke the two teeth off and made the loud banging sound that's inconsistent. So that says timing and or fuel leak. Let's dive in there. Oh yeah, plug wires, firing order, right, all the same. Let's go. Let's start by confirming the firing order, because I've done this 1,000 times and I have screwed it up more than once. You know, like, you think you figured it out, you think you check it, but any other adjustment we make will be no good if the spark plugs are not getting juice in the right order. So the classic small block Chevy firing order is 1 8 4 3 6 5 7 2. Eventually you'll memorize that, because everybody kind of does over time. So we're just gonna quadruple check it. I'm even gonna check that on the internet just to make sure my brain isn't wrong. So in theory this should be 1, but it's sitting right on the headers, so that's never good, ever. Now these are new plug wires, but I also want to show you something here. See how that's rubbing right there? Like, this one's just been sitting on here 1,000 miles and I can already see wear. And if these things arc to each other, it'll send spark to multiple spark plugs at once, which is also something that could be happening. So I got one marked. I'm gonna go and mark all these in order, and then I can just keep checking and make sure it's right. All right, so now it's marked 1, 8, 4, 3, 6, 5, 7, 2. This is, I think they changed it for LS motors. I know nothing about LS motors, but I think that happened. So put it in the comments if you know. It doesn't really matter to me right now, but so now we can check, and you got to remember that it's 1, 3, 5, 7 the driver's side, 2, 4, 6, 8 on the passenger side. So we're going to kind of skip because it's a little difficult to maneuver around this in the van. Yep. Let's go to the other side. Process of elimination means 2 is correct, but it was correct. All right, firing order is correct, but I am seeing a little wear where these plugs are touching each other. So that could be a bit of an issue. I don't really see a way around some of that, but you know, I'm open to it. So now we got to check timing, and maybe it's way too advanced. Don't know. Unfortunately, given the situation, I think we got to get into spark plug number 1, see if we can get it out, and then the other option, the only other option I can think of is pulling the valve cover and making sure the valves are closed on the compression stroke. All right, gang, I can kind of get in there. You just kind of have to give it the old reach around. So I'm gonna save you the trouble. I'm gonna go ahead and get that spark plug out, and I'll see you here in a minute. Gang, I got the spark plug out, but it vanished into thin air. I've been climbing all around it. I didn't hear it fall. It's not in the socket. I've been under the car. I climbed over the engine from the inside. I'm telling you, man, it just poof, gone. You guys see it? I don't see it. Apparently it's just gonna be one of those days, gang. One of those days. I guess we'll move on, hope we find it. Otherwise, I guess I'll pull a new spark plug. I don't even know. And the weather's worsening, not bettering, which is unfortunate news. All right, gang, we're on the compression stroke. It's hard to show you because I can hardly see it myself. But we're already into the compression stroke, and the timing mark is about 9 o'clock right now, which makes me think we're about halfway through the compression stroke and it's going to end at 12. That's just what I've deduced about this particular balancer. So I've got a piece of welding rod in the cylinder at this point, and I'm going to keep slowly turning it over until it stops going out and starts going back in again. And that will give me enough of a clue that it's top dead center, and we'll remark our balancer to match our timing tab down there. Bad news is though, gang, I still have not found the vanished spark plug. It is still indeed vanished. Let's see. Still going out. Feels like it's close to the top. That's pinched in there, so I guess that's right about at the top. That's not good, but we can back it off just a little. Let's see what the timing mark is. So this isn't going to be perfectly accurate, but I think it's going to give me a pretty good clue at this point. I can mark on my balancer now at 0. The actual balancer mark is almost vertical right now. It's really hard to see, although maybe you guys can see it. Come on. Right there. Maybe a fuzz more. Interesting. Gotta make a judgment call here, but we're still gonna be pretty close, within a degree or two, I imagine. So let's put a new mark on the balancer, and then we can check the timing and see how we're doing. If I can find that spark plug. Dang it. All right, took a brief hiatus. Took myself to the hardware store, got some hamburgers for everybody, including the dog. I got this paint pen so that we can mark our balancer, because I did not find mine. All right, gang, so at this point, I got a little mark right there at what is lined up kind of with 0. Now, I've been rotating it, and my welding rod's kind of pinched, but I didn't, like, hammer on it. So what I'm going to do is back it off, go past top dead center, put the welding rod back in, and then go up till it pinches and just see where that mark is. And I would say right between those two is probably going to be close enough to top dead center for us to use the timing gun to get a good sense of what's actually going on here. All right, gang, there was only one spot where it was really pinched, and so you can see now, maybe, the 2 different marks on the balancer and how far apart they are. It's right around, I don't know, 45 degrees, which is sort of what I anticipated the whole time. So that should be good enough of a clue to give us a, you know, an idea of where we are. So I'm gonna break out the timing light. I gotta do one more round and see if I can find this vanished spark plug. Otherwise, I guess I'm gonna be grabbing a used one. Don't know what else to say about that. All right, gang, while I grab my timing light and a spare spark plug because I cannot find the other one, for those of you following along on my detective work, at this point, we're gonna check the timing. We are gonna see what happens when we try to start it. If it starts, we're gonna adjust the timing, hopefully, and see where it needs to be. If it's not already right, I suppose. And then after that, I guess we can look down the carburetor and see if it's dumping fuel after the fact, because that would create the situation where my brain is thinking if the timing is too advanced and there's fuel in a cylinder, then perhaps at startup it's bucking like crazy. Enough to break a tooth off the flywheel. Now, also for those of you keeping score and follow the channel, I did time it quote unquote by ear, and I continued to advance it to try to get better performance. And at some point off camera, I did knock it back a couple degrees, but that was just by eyeball looking at the distributor, and you know, it's 360 degrees, so I turned it a little. That's kind of how I did that. It seemed to solve the problem initially, but then the problem is back, and well, here we are today, gang. Now, also for those keeping score on my detective work, I don't remember what numbers they were, maybe 4 and 5. I didn't really check the volts to the torque converter once I found the missing flywheel teeth. So I should at least go and check and make sure they're still tight, but we're gonna continue down this path, and before we call it a day, we'll just check that too. All right, I just took the air cleaner off, and there's gas in the weights of the secondary butterflies, and I'm not sure why that is, but that definitely speaks to this carburetor is still leaking and stuff, or not still, like I didn't change anything. It means the carburetor's leaking possibly down into the intake, which is something I suspected. If that's combined with, you know, advanced timing, I think we can say that, you know, if we rectify those 2 things, we've got this one kind of solved, but remains to be seen. We got to start it up. Whew. Could be the float, could be needle sticking, could be anything. Really, I never got into this carb. So I guess we're gonna go ahead and start it, which makes me nervous because it might go kablooey, but I don't really see much of another choice. From there, we'll check the timing, and then one thing at a time. If we can get it timed a little better, then perhaps, well, I don't see a way around pulling the carb off and figuring out why it's overflowing or leaking. But once we get it timed, if it's run for a minute, we can poke our eyeballs down the carburetor and see if it's like siphoning fuel like I think it is. I'm gonna go to park, not gonna touch the gas. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, since I turned it over, it will not like have gas in the cylinders, but we'll see. Here we go. You guys want to watch my face? You want to watch the car? I don't know. That sounded okay, right? I'm trying not to give it gas. I guess I got a little squirt. Oh, that just closed the choke. Okay. Tapping the gas closed the choke. That's kind of important. Let's go see where the timing is. All right, gang. According to our new mark, they're off the charts here. at 700 RPM-ish. No vacuum advance. I just want to confirm too that I believe that thing goes up to 14 before top dead center. So that means we're close to 16 before top dead center right now, based on what I'm seeing here. Also, we've got a little more fuel pressure than we want. We want to be at about 5.5 according to the Edelbrock website, and we're at about 7. So we're gonna go ahead and roll that back a little bit too. So the timing's still showing off the charts around 16 or 18 degrees with no mechanical advance. Now, my guess here is with my method of the welding rod and making that mark, that if anything, that's still showing a degree or two before top dead center, not after, because it got tight and I couldn't pull it out. So it only went up over the hump, which means we could be closer to 20 degrees initial timing, which we'll get into that in a second. Well, let's roll it back to something reasonable, like 10 for now. That's right at 10. So I can live with that for a minute, because I think that may be closer to 11 or 12, just in reality, based on my way of setting the mark. So I'm gonna go ahead and lock that in, and then we're gonna watch the carburetor when I turn the car off and see if it's boiling over or flooding. All right, we're locked in at 10 degrees now, according to my like kind of makeshift mark. So we're gonna think 11, 12. It's been running for a minute. Engine's warm, 180. Got a flashlight, so let's see what happens when we shut her down. Not seeing anything yet. I guess I'll just keep my eyes on it for now. See what happens. I'm gonna go ahead and adjust. I think I got a little bit of a valve cover leak, so I'm gonna tighten those down while I'm in here. Do you guys want to fire it right back up, see what happens? I know you do. All right, not sure why, but the adjustment on this seems to work, but I had to turn it off and let the fuel pressure kind of drop down, and then turn it back on after I adjusted it. So it's right at 5. Edelbrock says between 4.5 and 5.5 pounds at idle, so we're doing good there. Well, gang, what have we learned so far on this one? I mean, I think the first lesson is I will always find top dead center and make sure the timing mark and the timing tab line up based on the physical top dead center of the piston, no matter what I think I know before I put the engine in. Now, this is all a learning experience for me, gang. I'm no expert on this stuff. I've got a bunch of stuff with small block Chevys, and so I knew enough to know that there were different balancers, you know, but exactly which ones were which or how to tell, I still don't exactly know. Honestly, until this experience and a motor I just bought, I thought that all balancers that had a 12 o'clock mark were the post 86 type of engine. That's not true, and it turns out that maybe those balancers even fit the earlier small blocks. So it's something to check, and if you don't know, it can send you down a lot of weird rabbit holes, or like the guy I bought this engine from, make you think your distributor's broken, or make you think your engine's bad or something. This engine's not bad. That's definitely not true. But the timing marks were not they were not where I thought they were supposed to be. But we got that sorted out, I think. Now, granted, I did do some damage. I broke 2 teeth off a flywheel, which I've never done, flex plate, whatever. Never done, never had on one of my cars, ever. So, one should have been enough, I guess, but the inconsistency of the problem left me a little bit confused. However, I think it turns out that it was what I thought it was, but timing and maybe a little bit of residual fuel, potentially from too much fuel pressure. Granted, this carb right here might have other issues. Now, in an endeavor not to do too many things at once, I'm encouraged to kind of let it ride, because I've already done two things: backed off the timing and adjusted the fuel pressure. So I want to see what that does before I pull the carb off the car and suddenly decide that I need to, you know, change a third factor in this equation. Now, for those of you at home that think I'm a big dummy, you're not wrong. The first time it made that bucking noise, first thing I did was back the timing off a little bit. Now, granted, I didn't back it off enough, I guess. I don't know if the time, I don't know. But I did drive the thing somewhere between, I'd guess between 800 and 1,000 miles over the last few months, all on short trips, roughly 15 miles each way, each journey. But if you're thinking that why didn't I notice it pinging like crazy and detonating like crazy, it's never been on the highway. I just got the tires changed yesterday, so 45, 50 is about where it maxed out, which is relatively low in the RPM range, so I don't really think it was detonating very much. It wasn't like I was hitting it hard on the gas. It was basically between idle and, I don't know, 2,000 RPM in relatively cool weather. So I'm not concerned that I melted any pistons or anything like that, but I am glad that I looked into this and resolved it. Like I said, I wish I had thought to do this ahead of time, checking top dead center and all, but I kind of learned on this one that that could be a thing to even look out for, you know? It had a balancer, it had a timing mark. You put the timing tab on and that's the thing, right? No, it's not, and I learned that. So, you know, can't win them all, but you can definitely learn from your losses. Hiya! Well, obviously we got her back together there, gang. Nothing to it but to do it, you know. Let's go ahead and give her a little test drive, I guess. Here we go. Maiden Voyage with decent timing. Hopefully. Hopefully decent timing is what I mean. Here we go. It's actually very responsive now. Like, a lot more responsive. So this thing hasn't been on the highway in over 5 years. Maybe, I don't even know. We're not gonna do math right now because we're about to get on the highway. Now that we have adjusted our timing and all of that jazz, and we have brand new tires, this is sort of the maiden voyage for all of that. So, see what happens. Waiting for the green light. All right, bangarang! We're only going 40 so far, nothing to get excited about yet. Trafficy for a Sunday afternoon. Alright, we're at 60 miles an hour. She's driving pretty straight, pretty good. It's kind of a windy day too, and this thing can be a bit of a sail, and she's tracking straight down the road. 65. Dang. It's also not even that loud in here, and I don't even have my thingy pulled back. Like, that'll quiet it a little bit. To nearly 70 miles an hour. My foot was barely in it. It's still got a little room to go. No sense in just, you know, doing it, but she tracked down the road safe. I feel good about it now. I think, gang, that like this is now a bona fide adventure vehicle. Yeah, so the flywheel's missing some teeth, but so are hockey players, and that doesn't stop them now, does it? I think we're gonna keep going with it. I'm not gonna tear this thing apart enough to do that. until it proves to be a bigger problem. I think we fixed the thing that was breaking the teeth. I feel pretty confident about that, but nothing to do but prove it by putting some more miles on it, enjoying the van a little more, and, you know, seeing what happens. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this episode. If so, please consider subscribing. It helps me out a ton. If not, I'll try better next time. Good luck on your projects out there. See you next time on Between the Sharks.